Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting. Our chair, Patty Booker, is away on business, and so I'm stepping in her place. And we will begin with introductions and administrative remarks.
I do have some administrative remarks for some questions that were asked at a previous board meeting. There were questions asked about the June financial reports. Those June financial reports that were presented at the August meeting, those are unaudited financial reports. We are continuing to accrue expenses and revenues, and so that is not the final report and should not be interpreted as the final audited report. That will be presented sometime later in the year when we're done with all of our accruals and deferrals. And as far as a comparison, the synopsis that we normally include, we do not include that for the month of June because that is not the completed report.
Okay.
There was also some questions about the quotes that were awarded for food service, and the question was what did the district spend in the past, and those were the ones that were listed as based on usage. Again, it's based on usage, so what we used in the past may not necessarily be anywhere close to what we're using coming up in the next year. But for the baking company in 2016-17, we spent $26,580. For Simcoe, which is Jack and Jill Ice Cream, we spent $14,635. For So Fun Yogurt, we spent $5,500. For Seasons Pizza, which was our primary pizza vendor for 16-17, we spent $68,200. And for Mainline Pizza, we did not use them last year, so we did not spend any money for them. In regards to Cress, that was also based on usage. Last year, we spent $15,400. There were some additional questions regarding educational placements, specifically the waiving of the tuition for students from ABC House. Based on the secondary PDE approved tuition rate, which is $16,043.70 for 8 students, that would represent a cost of $128,350.08. I do want to point out that that does not mean that's the actual cost of adding those 8 students. Typically, you're able to place those students into a class with no additional cost to the district because of space and how things are administered up at the high school. There was also a question about the median salary for a Radnor full-time teacher. That median salary is $102,625. I think that's all the questions.
Thank you.
As you commented about the pizza and the ice cream, those are also, the students purchase those items as well. So while there's a cost to the district that is to purchase, it's the students who then purchase those during cafeteria.
That is correct.
All right. Okay, that's it, Michelle?
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Next is public comment. Hi, Judy, welcome.
Thank you. I just have, I appreciate the response about the different questions. The analysis or the synopsis that typically occurs every other month of the year, it's still not clear in my mind why June, even though it's not completed, well, none of the other months are completed either, really, whatever it is continues forward, why that it doesn't deserve the same kind of, I find it very helpful from the administration to take, when they take a look and, kind of give us a rationale behind the changes in some of the numbers. So I just wondered why that can't be done for June. And regarding the different costs, it's nice to know what was spent in prior years, because although the district and the taxpayers aren't really writing the check for this amount, it's still, if you get that award, that's a pretty, I mean, you're making $68,200 from Radnor Township School District. That's pretty nice award to get. So it's nice to, I think, keep track of it. Thank you for that. Today's agenda regarding the tentative agreement with RTEA. As an endorsement for transparency, would a board member or a candidate request the full disclosure of the approximate taxpayer cost of the benefits of the new contract, along with the published salary increases? So what's the taxpayer's out-of-pocket costs, both for salary and benefits? Because the benefits are always kind of the hidden costs. And based on some discussion at the last committee meeting and prior meetings, I'm still interested in knowing whether any board members are interested in renegotiating the tri-party agreement to improve parking, create greater flexibility for Radnor Elementary School, and consolidate land like the Radnor Memorial Field. So, and the Radnor Environmental Park, which is right on Radnor Elementary School. And just two other things, quick things. How much revenue is generated by the Ithan Elementary Annex, the two private homes, and also, do we get revenue from those other portable units? Do we collect from that? And finally, I know you're getting an update on the substitutes this year. I just wondered if our experiences last year, we did make some changes. Are we satisfied with those changes? Any new changes for this year? And any evaluation about the quality of the substitutes that were supplied by this new service? And some of these, as I said, before, some of these questions always seem like they could blur into other committees, but, I'm bringing them forward because you're discussing them. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Welcome, Mrs. Bonenberger.
It's been a long time since I sat here. Okay, I'll be as fast as I can. So this summer, I, as a parent, found out some unfortunate news about how we run things in Radnor. So I'm asking the Finance Committee to consider these recommendations for the board, for the district rather. One, we obligate students to pay fees to certain booster clubs in order to participate in Radnor activities. The problem is when there's no transparency and we can't see where the money's going, we have no access to the finances. And these are not 501c3 structures. It creates a lot of problems. It's not fair for the parents who are running these booster clubs. Some of them have no financial backing. They're just volunteers. It makes it awkward when parents who are interested have to ask the booster parents to see the financials. It's a very unfortunate situation. And I think if we are going to obligate our students to participate in our activities but pay someone else money, we better know where the money's going, how it's going, and we better be transparent. I feel very strongly about that, as you can imagine. Another big issue, I would like to see us mirror the way that the football game collects revenue for its events, have us do the same thing for all events at the district. If you don't, you have parent volunteers collecting money, tens of thousands of dollars easily, and it puts them in a terrible position. They are not necessarily trained to collect that much money. They don't have processes in place. We're talking about a large amount of money, and I know historically we've gotten into trouble with money issues with schools. I know of nothing going on right now that is improper management. I am not implying that. I don't believe that. I'm saying there's no reason not to have supplements collecting this money as we do for the football games. Similarly, I am aware that there are issues where we have booster clubs hiring people, and then they work with our students, and they are not subjected to the same clearances that our employees are. That's a huge concern for me. From what I understand, that the Band Booster Club will have, there's a supplemental position, maybe a nominal position, paid by the school district, and they supplement that position with their money. That way, they're getting treated the same way we would for all employees. Please recommend that we do the same thing, expand the supplements. That's a big deal. We need to protect our kids. And I'm talking about my children, so I care. How am I on time, Susan? I saw you look at the clock. Am I good?
You know, if there's a reflection, I can't see.
Okay. So,
Come on, Julia.
that's it for now. I'm just, and finally, with regarding the supplements that we're going to be asked to approve, it's very important to me that they reflect accurately what we are actually asking people to do. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that we are paying any employees to do work that they're not actually doing, especially considering that we just verified them. I think they might need to be re-verified, or else it's very hard to vote on them, especially when finances are involved. Really, I mean, why pay employees to manage finances if they're not going to be managing the finances? And that's it.
Thanks, Julia. All right. I think we've run out of public. Okay. Approval of the August 15th minutes. Any issues, anybody?
You know, I wasn't here, so I'm not going to comment one way or the other.
They looked okay to me, too. All right. We'll consider them approved. Thank you. All right, Michelle.
I would like to invite Zach Williard, Dan O'Brien, and Mike Lilies to join us up at the table. They are back to discuss the refunding of our variable rate note. You have a handout that was distributed at the start of the meeting and is available on the back table. It's available in yellow. There was a notation on the board agenda that it would not be available, and that's due to the fact that these gentlemen have been working on this right up until the time they were coming to our meeting this evening to have the most accurate information for us to review. So, Zach and Mike,
actually still
Dan?
don't have accurate information.
Make sure you put your mic on.
We have better information than what's in here, but it isn't accurate. So we got our last email at 4:50 today.
Okay.
So real quick, just a reminder why we're here. This is, I think, kind of meeting number 3, very thorough process. The whole point of the beginning of the plan and why, the district had asked us to come was to investigate fixing out your interest rate on your 2000 Del Val note, okay? The point being you're going to limit future interest rate risk. Longer term rates are low, okay, and shorter term rates are on the rise. So it's kind of a perfect intersection, or almost a perfect intersection of the time to take care of this, limit future interest rate risk, and also take away any interest rate swap exposure that you might have on your existing bonds. Okay, so that was why we're here. We went through the process of looking at a bond issue, getting bank loan quotes, talking to Del Val Authority about their rates. We've now focused in on 2 options, which we're going to talk about. Okay. So I think we can skip page 1. Rates are still very good. Okay, they've kind of been floating around, in this little area over the last couple months. So all in all, rates are still kind of in the right spot where this makes sense to do it. Page 2, I think, hits on kind of what I just said. This is how we've gotten here. Now, we do have a timeline in here that we'll talk about after the numbers that should you choose to move forward with one of these options, we kind of spell out how this would take place over the next couple weeks. Page 3, that's your debt summary. Okay, you've seen that a few times. So page 4 is the page that we care about. Okay. So in here we have some numbers. The interest rates that we got back this morning, which are rates that were going to be held firm through your board meeting next week and through settlement of the hypothetical transaction, which is set to occur November 1, if we follow the timeline. They were a little higher than what we were expecting. Okay, they did go up a little bit from the last meeting. Now, nothing earth-shattering, nothing that takes the options off the table, but we did go back to TD, and it seems like they were able to correct these interest rates, I'll call it. So we got an email here at the end of the day. Interest rates are about 8 basis points, or 0.08% lower than what we're showing in here, which is good. Okay, so the hypothetical savings is higher. Now, again, I want to point out, and I think we've tried to make this point a few times over the last few months, in this specific scenario, we're not focused on savings, okay, because we're funding variable rate debt. as compared to in the past where we've refinanced fixed rate debt and we know exactly what the savings is. Here, the whole point of this plan, as I said earlier, was always to limit future interest rate risk, okay, to the district. So we have two alternatives on this colored page here. Alternative one is the two-step plan, which will fix out all of your Del Val note, okay? And this will be prepayable at any time without penalty, in whole or in part in the future, meaning that if you ever choose to take cash and pay down the loan, you can do that, okay? If there's ever a reason that we want to get out of this note, for example, some type of large-scale financial crisis again where we need to rid ourselves of this, you have the ability to do that. And if somehow there's ever a chance to refinance the note, you have the ability to do that too. So that's alternative one. Alternative two has lower interest rates than alternative one, if you remember. But the caveat is you do not have the ability to prepay it. There is a penalty. So I think, we typically like to leave optionality on the table when you're going through these types of processes. You never know what's going to come up in the future that you might want to restructure this or refinance it or pay it off or get out of it. But we're happy to talk about alternative two as well if you'd like to. So let's start with alternative one, step one. Okay, remember we're trying to keep this bank qualified, which means we will do this in a two-step process. So you can see step one is about $9.8 million of the existing debt. The interest rate, which was proposed this morning, was a 2.24. That's now a 2.16. Okay, so it's better. It's better to the tune of about $60,000. So real numbers.
Yeah.
It was a big change. Again, prepayable at any time without penalty. And then column 8 shows you what your existing debt would look like if over the next 2 to 3 years, short-term rates go up about a little over 1%. Okay, so that column 8 hasn't changed through this whole process. We've always been assuming something for your future interest rates. We feel this is a nice conservative number. Some people might tell you the rates are going to go up a lot more than this. Some say, maybe not. But this assumes that rates go up basically a little over 1% over the next 2 to 3 years. Okay, if that was the case, then you would save this $200,000 and you take off any interest rate risk to the district in the future. Okay, the existing loan can go up to a 15% interest rate. That's the max rate on it. So you're limiting it very, significantly.
Yeah.
Right. So then step two, again, we had to break this into two pieces. Okay, step two has an interest rate of a 188. It shows up at the top. It's really a 184. That also came down a few basis points. That saved an extra, I think, $7,500 off this.
75?
$7,500, correct.
Meaning it would still cost us about
So it's still,
$2,500.
you're still in the red about $2,500 in this scenario. Now, we don't have all the final costs in. I think we're probably a little bit conservative, so we might, be about break even. But again, focusing away from the savings aspect, the point of the plan, if you wanted to move forward, was to limit the future interest rate risk. So if rates go above a 275, these numbers all change. And it also takes away any interest rate swap exposure that you have on your existing debt. Okay, so that's step two. So then the total in the green. So at the end of the day, right now, we're set up to move forward if you want next week with the board. Saul Ewing has, worked through a resolution that they, are going to have to present. We'll talk about how that will play out here in just 1 second. But this is all kind of in place. Now, the rate on the red one, step two, that is not locked as of today. Okay, the rate on step one, we do have a lock on that. Okay, step two, should we choose to execute that, we'll talk about that in a second again, but that still has a little, a few weeks of rate exposure. Now, because it's not very sensitive to, a 5 or 10 basis point move, that's why it's not too big of a deal, whereas step one is much more sensitive, okay, to short-term interest rates. So I'll pause there. Questions
What was
about?
the total savings we were estimating on 1 and 2?
It would be about 204,000 under this interest rate assumption.
Zach, what are we paying right now on that?
You're
So
paying
it's on the page before, right?
150, I believe. So if you
Well,
look,
the 150 is the estimate, or that's actually what we've been at
that's
for
what
a
you're,
while, right?
that's what you're,
Okay.
yeah. So column 8 shows you, so we're kind of assuming you stay at 150, I think, into next year. And then as the Fed hikes, as Janet Yellen, the national headline, as that interest rate increases, that will correlate with this.
What would that do if we do this mid-year refi? What will that do to the local effort for June 30, 18 and June 30, 19?
Well,
What would that do with those two
I
payments?
think that we determined that for this coming budget that we can maneuver around having a negative impact.
Right, so for this budget year, we'll just have a negative impact, and it won't have any bearing on what happens in terms of the local effort. And then going forward, it'll be based on the new interest rate and the new payment, so the local effort will be exactly the same as what we're currently receiving in terms of percentage that we get.
And just to
Wait a second.
clarify.
Walk me through that again, because if the savings is going down by 200,000, somewhere we're going to be seeing that in the.
You will receive less, but in terms of the percentage that you're going to receive based on your payment, because you're going to be paying less, the percentage will remain the same. So we currently get reimbursed at 0.1726, I believe, on that loan, and then that's applied to our aid ratio of 0.10. We will still continue to get that based on our payments. So it's going to be based on the payment. The percentage that we're going to be reimbursed is not going to decrease.
And this is not delayed by any Harrisburg Plan Con issues. It's still money that you're owed, and it's already been through the system. So even though we're refinancing it into a new loan, it doesn't get caught up in the Harrisburg minutia, unless everyone's caught up. But it doesn't put you in the back of the line, I guess is what I mean.
Okay, thanks.
So that's what we have for that plan. Now, again, do you want me to go through the prepayment penalty version? I mean, it's essentially the same, the same logic. Again, the rates are lower because TD is willing to give you a lower rate because they know you're never going to be able to get out of this loan through the maturity of it. So the rate is lower, therefore the hypothetical savings will be higher. But again, we would just caution that, there is restrictiveness to that.
So that's what I wanted to, so these numbers, the 2.09 and the 1.75, those are still accurate. Those didn't change today, right?
Incorrect. So
Okay.
those have come down. Okay, let me go through them. Step one in
Okay.
the purple,
Yep.
that's now a 199. So that
Okay.
actually came down 0.1%.
Okay,
Step two is now a 173.
okay.
So that came down 2 basis points. So the total savings is about 340,000 would be what you'd cross out and put in the orange there.
Okay, so my question is, what's the prepayment penalty? Is it a dollar figure? Is it a percentage?
It's a very complicated formula.
Okay, but boil it down.
That-
How
that is-
much is it incremental to the incremental savings?
You will have to pay back all of what you owe, the interest that is assumed here. So by prepaying the loan, let's say next year you want to prepay the loan, the interest that is all due is still due, even if you decide to pay it down. So it's not like where you pay off your mortgage and now you
Right.
no longer owe the interest.
Right,
Okay, you're still going to owe.
We have to pay the principal and the interest. So
but we'd have to pay it
the
all at
full-
once.
Yeah, we'd have to pay the
Correct.
full 65.
So the
Okay.
point being, you would never do that.
No.
So.
I mean, unless there's a very
Real,
bad
yeah.
situation.
So the question then that I have is, under what circumstance would we want to prepay the restructured loan?
So there's always a refinancing opportunity. Are we really going to refinance 2%? Probably not. Okay. The one that always makes kind of my firm nervous, and probably RBC too, I won't speak for them, is if there's ever an event in the future, and again, I'm not going to be able to pin down what the event is I'm speaking of, but the things that we always thought could never happen pre-financial crisis, we now know can happen. Okay. So if something ever happens to TD Bank or the financial system or tax rates or something in the future that could affect this loan, we would want you to be able to rid yourself of this.
Okay, so two questions about that. How long out is this payout? Both, is it?
2029.
Nine.
Okay,
the
so
final
it's
maturity.
12 years.
12 years.
Okay. And in the scenario that you just mentioned, where something happens with TD Bank, wouldn't the paperwork be written such that that wouldn't be our prepayment penalty to have to pay? Or are you saying that no matter what the circumstance, if there's any reason we have to prepay that, we would have the penalty?
Yes.
Even if the fault is through
That's what
TD?
so the paperwork, Saul Ewing has been going back and forth with TD Bank, lots of revisions, and it's been a lot. We're all going to assume they're a very good law firm that this document is going to be written, and it will be written as advantageous to you as possible. But we can't cover things that nobody's thought of yet, and those things seem to come up. I don't know what they are.
Let me ask you this. Can you give an example of an unexpected prepayment situation that has happened, with some other district or some other entity that would allow us to get our heads around what that risk might look like?
Because it's a pretty big difference.
Because it's a difference, and I don't know if
big
you're,
difference.
I'm looking.
It's
I'm
a
looking.
50% difference.
I'm looking at this and I'm going,
Prepayment risk.
prepayment
Yeah.
risk, I'm happy to take it, but I need to know what's in your head that I can't quite get my hands around.
Well, one thing that some districts they get concerned about, if for some reason you were happened to be in a budget crunch, and you wanted to take refinance debt like this and just lengthen the borrowing term, which is not something you normally would like to do, but sometimes districts will do that because the alternative is raising taxes. So you would lose that ability to do that if you should ever want to. Not saying that you would want to do that, but
How big is this portion as compared to our entire debt picture, though? It's, not, we can look on page, if we were going to go there, we might leave this one alone.
You have 90 million of total debt.
Total debt of 90 million, so this is, 15%.
yeah.
And this would be, it sounds to me, it would be the only piece right now that we would have a prepayment issue with.
Well, it's
that correct?
It's a little more complicated than that. If you go to page 3, depending on when this hypothetical budget scenario is in the future, all of your bond issues have call dates associated with them.
Right.
Those, again, so if you were going to do this, let's just say you were going to do it this year, you needed to restructure debt to fill a budget gap, you'd have to have a call date that's within 90 days of when we're doing this. Mm-hmm. The bank loan, again, would be prepayable at any time, so you can do that any time between now and the end of the life of this. But you couldn't, for example, in columns 8 and 21, you couldn't use the 2014 A's right now to prevent a budget problem because their call date is not until 8/15 of 2019, and we'd need to be within 90 days of that. So this would be the most flexible piece of debt in your debt portfolio if you picked the prepayable at any time. Again, we're not trying to talk you into it. If you want to go with the make whole, that's fine, but we're just laying out, the kind of the pros and cons.
Yeah, one other possible situation, excuse me, Zach, it could be, and if for some reason you might want to pay down some debt, this would be the easiest one to pay down with cash, because you couldn't do that if it were, prepayable with a penalty. So if you just want to reduce your debt exposure sometime in the future.
I'm just more, I think to evaluate that, I just don't see it in front of us, what the interest rates are on the other things. I know that we did a really advantageous refinancing a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
No, you will have, some of your bond issues will have higher interest rates, okay, specifically some of the ones that go out longer.
Right.
All the ones that have longer are going to be higher than 2%, I would be
Or
willing to guess.
1.99. I can't imagine prepaying down
But
something
again,
that's
if you want to prepay it and you're not within that call date, you can't do it.
Okay.
So again, this would be the most flexible
Yeah,
piece,
that's
I guess.
what we're saying. It gives you total flexibility.
Right.
And even though it's only a small piece of your entire debt portfolio, on a year-to-year basis, over the next 12 years, only the 2014 bonds have higher debt service on a year-to-year basis. And as Mike and Zach were just saying, this note would now become your most flexible piece of debt that you would have, and it's for, debt service that has your second highest payments of all of your debt
Yeah,
portfolio.
I guess if you ever needed to do something, this would be probably the most effective, regardless of the call feature, the most effective of all of your bond issues because it's shorter and it has higher principal amounts in every year, to your point.
Okay, so, all right. Anything else we ought to know before we have a question and answer, or do we want to engage in Q&A
Just
right
the
now?
last thing would just be to chat about the timeline, but if you want to
Okay.
ask questions about this page, let's just stick here.
Well, yeah, I want to hear what do you think, Mike? Where are you?
I'm right here. I like the lower payments, but it's one of these things. It's like they're saying. I would, at first blush, you like the lower payments, but the make whole prepayment, you got to pony up $16.5 million. But if you want to prepay it for anything, I mean, like you said, before 2008, I mean, I work for a bunch of guys that have been in investment banking since the 70s, and they'd never seen anything like that. So we all know, like you said, we all know crazy stuff's possible. Bankruptcy law is getting rewritten by federal directive, that kind of thing, so you never know.
Right.
So it is kind of nice to have the flexibility there if it only costs us an extra $140,000 over 10 years. If we ever do need to do it, this is 14 to 16% of our debt, depending on how you look at it. Some of the other pieces we have, I don't think we can prepay without penalties or issuing whole, doing the same thing. So
You
The
just
flex-
have
the
to wait
flexi-
a little while for some of the others.
yeah, so you have to wait a little while. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to get lower than 199. I mean, that's crazy. But the step one of the alternative one, what did you say the rate was today?
It will be a 216.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Versus 1.99, yeah.
crazy low also, because like you said, Yellen wants to unload.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good decision to,
Yeah, once,
have to
once
make
she
here.
starts that, it's
Yeah.
only going to go up. But I like the lower rates on alternative two, but alternative one does give us any flexibility in the event that anything, the black swan comes.
Susan, what's your take?
I'm curious.
I want to know what she thinks.
Well,
too.
yeah, I mean, I've asked my questions. I'm curious what conversations you've had with them about this.
Well, I understand where they're at in terms of wanting the ability to be, or recommending the ability to be able to prepay. But if you look at page 3, and you look at this bond issue, which is in column 2, it's one of our shortest duration and time bond issues. If the district really was going to prepay something or refinance something, you probably wouldn't look at that loan to prepay. You would look at the GOB series of 2012 with the longer duration and the GOB series 2014B. You'd look at those two in terms of when you would be able to make some changes. And the 2012 series, 2/15 of 2018, that's the call date. And then the one for 2014, it's 2015 of 2022, which is a lot further out. But we just really aggressively refinanced all of these bonds that we could. We did how many refundings, Zach?
6.
6 in a really short period of time. And I think that was really effective for us. So I don't see the downside of doing a fixed rate on this with a prepayment penalty. I don't see the downside to doing it that way.
Have you ever had the repayment?
I've never, ever seen a district that has a penalty. I've never, fortunately, been in a district that had a prepayment penalty that wanted to pay that bond back in earlier than necessary. The situations that Zach brought up and Mike brought up about the fact that if you were in a budget crunch and you wanted to have a deferral to your budget, so you would lose that ability. I don't think that necessarily applies to us here in Radnor. I think.
Well, I'm just struck by it's a savings of another 50%.
Yeah.
Over a short-term bond, I don't see how I think that we have enough other options. If you really had to dump something or we had to do something, I don't think we have many other choices of what you would do to walk us through that to avoid the downside of this particular one versus the upside of the additional $100,000.
I would agree. But keep in mind that savings that they're talking about, that's really exposure to additional interest. And it's not like a one-time savings like we got with our other bonds.
Right.
It's over the life of the payment of this
It's
loan.
kind of an imputed savings,
Correct.
right? So, honestly, I'm listening and I hear you, but truthfully, as a practical matter, I'm trying to think of a situation where we would be in dire straits and needing to refund something like this. I'm inclined to agree with Michelle and Susan that I would rather take advantage of a better rate and just say, we're living with this until we amortize it.
Okay.
That's what I would recommend. I mean, I don't know how strongly you feel, Mike.
Not very.
not very? Would you
Yeah,
be
I mean,
comfortable
and-
recommending that to the board?
Yeah, because I mean, it is, I hate to say this, but we are Radnor. I mean, our credit risk is, I mean, you guys have seen it, you've run the numbers. Our credit risk is pretty much, as good as it gets for the bank.
Yeah, you're
It's reflected
in a
the
much
rates.
better spot than lots of districts
Yeah.
we deal with.
Yeah.
That would maybe potentially need to, I mean, we do plenty of restructuring. That's not something that doesn't happen, but it's not typically AA1
Yeah.
Radnors.
Well, I appreciate your unburdening yourself of your future concerns, because I think it's important that we hear them. But honestly, I'm not sure I think it's worth it, based on the whole picture. So, yeah, all right, next steps,
Yep.
what do we have to do?
So we're gonna look at alternative 2.
Yep,
So when we come back next week, assuming you want us to see us again, we'll have,
oh, you're listen, you're great.
we'll have taken this handout from lots of, down to this.
Okay, good.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good.
So page 6, skip page 5, you've seen that already.
Yeah.
So page 6, okay, just kind of goes through. So we're here tonight at September 19th. All right, authorization for the financing team to proceed at the next meeting with, what we'll call alternative 2. Mm-hmm. Okay. So at next week's meeting, there's going to be 2 resolutions available for you. Okay, the first resolution is going to be for step 1 with the make-whole, with the rates we talked about. Okay, again, that rate is going to be locked tomorrow morning, assuming that you all are in agreement that we're going to at least do that one next week. Okay, so next week you're going to be able to accept that bid via the Saul Ewing debt resolution. So that will be locked up. Okay, for federal tax law purposes, Saul Ewing needs to separate step 1 and step 2 by at least 15 days to constitute separate transactions so we can do all this bank qualified, non-bank qualified stuff. So resolution number 2, which will be available for adoption, will not lock in a rate, and it will not constitute a sale. If you remember, going back to that big 6-step plan, what this is called is a parameters resolution, which allows us to take the action needed next week, but then kind of, I think the date we have here is October 12th, on or about October 12th, we're going to call Michelle and say, hey, here's the new TD, will probably be a little bit before October 12th, but here's the new TD rate, okay, and assuming it's still within kind of a band of where we are now, she can sign it, and that will then execute that second transaction and lock in that rate. So at that point, we'll be done with both transactions. But all that we need from the board would be done next week.
And what kind of parameters are you going to put on the max? What kind of numbers will you put on that for the resolution number 2?
Well, that was going to be one of the questions I think we had for you is, how wide of a range do we want to be able to keep that interest rate? So right now, we're assuming the rate is about a 173, okay? Again, that one's not firm, so let's just say on October 10th, we have a new rate.
So low.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, barring any major market moves, we think it should be somewhere, I'd say within 0.1% of that, which again, on the second piece, isn't quite as painful if it goes up.
Yeah.
And if it goes down, great, but again, it's not going to.
Right.
So what would be a comfortable number for you, as long as the rate does not exceed something?
2? I mean,
Yeah, I was going
Yeah.
to say like the same as step 1, probably 199 or 2. Does that give you enough wiggle room, do you
That
think?
does. I mean, we're certainly not going to aim for 2.
No.
We'll keep it, yeah.
No.
We'll keep it as low as.
Please don't misunderstand.
Well,
Yeah.
so we'll
TD
define
Bank
that.
doesn't listen to this, do they?
Define that, but yeah, we'll make sure, that the rate that we get is.
Okay,
Okay.
right.
So just so we understand, what the recommendation is from you to the board next week, again, so we'll have both of these resolutions. One will be binding as of next week, one will be the parameters, but you are recommending that we move forward with both step 1 and 2 of alternative 2, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
The last couple pages just have the commitment letters, but again, those are still being worked through. Saul Ewing's working on crossing some more things out of here that we think you don't want.
Okay.
They're doing a good job of that.
Yeah.
Good.
And the interest rate, again, has changed and come down, so those are not finally.
Okay,
We will have final ones next week.
Thank you.
all right, that's super.
Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thanks, gentlemen.
thank you.
Thank you.
Got you out of here more quickly.
When we see something the same way, it's probably the way to go.
Really check it
Thank you. guys.
out. I said, or really check it out.
No, it's hard to walk away from an additional 100.
I'm way too tight with money to do that. Okay. Number 2, update on the collection of, speaking of tight with money, real estate taxes.
So in your packet, you do have a handout that shows the real estate tax collection. You can see it's a comparison from what we've collected currently through August 31st, which is the end of the discount period in 2017-18 and 2016-17. We show you the percentage, and you can see in the first month, the month of July, as well as in the month of August, we've collected roughly the same amount that percentage-wise that we've collected in the past, which results in about 82% of our real estate taxes being paid in the discount period.
Okay, I mentioned this years ago, and I'll just, as my parsing comment, 2% seems like a huge discount to get when interest rates are this low. But that's managed by the state or the county?
It's actually managed by the state.
Yeah. And I know it hasn't changed in forever, but it does seem like a huge amount when
It certainly does.
we just refinance, we're refinancing for under that, so.
So back in the day when interest rates were much higher, people didn't necessarily pay in the discount period. They held on to their money because they made more in their bank. But now we
Sure.
see more people paying in that discount period to take advantage.
And thankful for it. Just saying.
No.
Listen,
Okay,
I'm
don't
counting
get me wrong, I take the
my
discount.
money. I count my money. I'm counting the district money, but yeah, okay. All right, very good. All right.
The next item I'm going to turn over to Mr. Stitzel. It's the tentative agreement with RTEA and Mr. Batchelor.
You have in front of you the RTEA and the district, am I on? Tentative agreement, and we listed the wage increases for the 5 years of that. That is including step movement and increases in cells over those 5 years. In addition to that, members on Step 15, if they were on Step 15 in the previous year, will receive off-scale compensation. As an example, in order to get the $1,500 in year 18-19, you would have to have been on Step 15 this current year, 17-18. So if you're moving to Step 15 and you're getting that incremental cost step movement, you do not get the additional money in that particular year. You have to wait a year to get that. All other contract items will remain the same within there. If something comes up within the agreement over the next 5 years of this agreement, both sides are willing to talk, and if a memorandum of understanding needs to be issued, we would do that. And any health care coverage will be altered per the Health Trust guidelines. Keep in mind, the Health Trust did have over 40 plans. They have narrowed it down to 10. The plan that we currently offer will expire at the end of this contract, and the union will need to take a different health care plan, and they'll be taking one of those 10 plans. Any questions?
I think we,
Well, I do want to just, I know that the public was asking about the health care or cost of the benefits. When we converted over to percent of premium, basically what we asked the teachers to do is to start to contribute toward the cost of the premium, because if it goes up 5%, 10%, what have you, then that increased their share, their cost sharing piece of this. And we're not increasing the percent premium that we're asking them to do, but we can't say how much it's going to cost over the next 5 years because we don't know exactly how much.
Correct. We do not know.
We just know that they'll be keeping pace with their percent
Correct.
premium.
Each side will keep the same percentage risk as they currently have.
Correct. Yes. That's what I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Anything else? And we will have this on the agenda for next week for approval.
that's fine.
Okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, subs.
And that rolls into the substitutes. We do not have a report for August because we did not have any student days within August. You do have your first slide is the slide you've been seeing over the past year. We did go back and look, and if you remember last month, we said there were some adjustments that we needed to make. We made those adjustments, so if you look at the second page, you'll see it says revised, and you'll see the decrease per month listed there of absences that went down per month. Now, the question is why did those go down? When we had a teacher that was out, and the district replaced them with a substitute, so a long-term substitute, compared to Source for Teachers replacing them, that teacher was put in the system as an absence, but a fill wasn't needed because we had our own replacement. We did not get charged from Source for Teachers, but it was just a record keeping that we could keep track who was out. In having my secretary look at this, and because she handles it on a daily basis, she realized that we were doing this, so we took those days out that we have our substitute that we employ in for their regular teacher. So example, if someone was out for an FMLA leave for a semester, that would have been our employee. That would have counted of 90 days of absences throughout this period of time. We've taken those out because the person was out, but it's not that they were out every day. We had our own employee in there. We were not using Source for Teachers. So that's why you see a different set of numbers there. From this point forward, we will be using this method for that. And the total for the past year was 944 absences that were taken out. So if you go back and if you would want to look at each month over that past year, you would see how those absences came out. The fill rate has not changed. There's no alteration for that because remember, we were not being charged, nor was Source for Teachers filling for those absences that were there. So therefore, their fill rate would not change.
The number of building substitutes, I saw it on the beginning of the, where did I see it? I know I read it. Or maybe it was in the minutes from last month. There it is. It's in the minutes. Is that one additional teacher at the middle school and one additional teacher at the high school for building
It's
subs?
what we had talked about originally, but at
Right.
the end of the year, we just didn't get them all filled. So we're at what this committee talked about last year in our capacity. We did have one person back out. They got a teaching job in another district. So we are down one at the high school.
So it's
So
a total of 15 building substitutes?
Yes, it's 44333.
Okay.
332, excuse me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Good. We had made some discussion about moving this reporting over to the curriculum committee, or at least wrapping them in, just because some of this is curricular and not budget stuff. Are we talking to Maureen and
Yeah,
doing that?
whenever her and the committee want me to come into that, or if they just want me to send that information to that committee for their agendas, we can do that. So whenever
I
she
would
gets
just-
the go-ahead
You guys
for
can
us to
work
come
it
in.
out, but I would just say that I know that there was, there had been several requests to bring this into that forum, and maybe it needs to be, maybe less the quantitative stuff and more about the quality of the instruction and some of those kinds of questions that are more appropriate for curriculum than this committee.
But you can keep the slides going for us on the website, but you don't have to come, read it every month. We can just go look at it
Yeah.
ourselves, and then
Yeah,
if we have
we
any
can put it on there.
questions about the quantities or costs, then we can, pull you back.
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, I think you should continue to crunch the data.
Yeah, we'll crunch it.
But you might, have a.
Put it on the website.
Put it on,
All right.
yeah, and make sure
Fair
that
enough.
they're conversant in it, and then, as I said, when you get to a point, Ken, where that's it's a good transition, I just want to make sure we don't lose that idea with this.
Yeah, so we don't have to have that as an agenda item every month. We've done our work. We figured
Right,
it
I
out. We
kinda-
addressed
yeah.
the financial.
We addressed the
You feel like it's
financial.
making a difference, so maybe we get a periodic update, just not every
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, like Mike said, I can
Yeah.
put this on
Thank you.
we can find a spot on the website that we can put every month on that people can look at it.
And maybe we
review.
can bring it back as informational on a quarterly basis.
Something
or
like that, yeah, and just, allow some qualitative, I'd like to hear the qualitative component of that, because it's not just the numbers. Okay, great. Gosh, I'm sticking. All right, so we're done. Is that correct? Second public comment. Good, because I got places to go.
One quick question. What is approximately our annual cost for debt service?
Oh,
for the
it's
district.
actually, it's on the sheet.
Oh, is
It's
it?
on-
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
it's on the Zach sheet.
Where is that?
It's it's
It
page
ranges
3.
around 6.6 up to 6.9 million, Judy, and then in 2035, it's 3.4 million.
Page 3,
Page 3, column 26.
Okay.
yeah, all the way
I'll
up.
just look at, so currently, we're paying about $6 million, $6.3 million for debt service. And getting back to the salary contract with the teachers, I understand that you may not have an exact cost for benefits, but surely you have to make some kind of a educated guess or educated calculation for budgetary purposes. And I think it would be really helpful to be able to look at an average teacher's salary plus an average the cost to taxpayers for the average teacher's benefit. I think that would be very helpful. As I said, I know it may not, it's a ballpark figure, and it may not apply to everybody, but it would just give people an idea of what the costs involved with this contract are. So, thank you, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Judy. Hi, Roberta.
Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road, and I just wanted to mention that the only black swan I can think of is that property tax reform referendum that might be coming down the way, so that might be a consideration that's a worst-case scenario. The other piece I would like to mention is I am glad that there is a new teacher contract. I think that'll go a long way in helping the district move forward and focus on the issues that relate most importantly to our students. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the total local effort.
Yeah. We're done. All right, thank you very much. We are adjourned.